everyone, and so we've come to the end. My top four favorite horror movies of all time. They consist of a Val Lewton film, two Universal classics, and a 2006 Guillermo del Toro feast. So, without delay, let's talk about my number four pick. This would be The Body Snatcher, directed by Robert Wise, produced by Val Lewton, and starring Boris Karloff in one of his most outstanding performances. If I were to give you the top three Karloff performances of all time, my picks would be Target's The Bride of Frankenstein and The Body Snatcher. In this movie, he plays a cab driver in 19th century Edinburgh, and he makes a side, he does a little business on the side as a grave robber. He goes into graveyards, digs up corpses, and sells them to the local doctor. In this case, Henry Daniell, as Dr. McFarlane, and he's also great in this. And when he finds that he can't get into the graveyards anymore, but he doesn't want to lose his side hustle, he decides to create corpses of his own. Now, as John Gray, Karloff just goes all out to show us a villain, one of the most fascinating horror movie villains I've ever seen, because he just has so many sides. At the very beginning of the film, we see him in his role as cab driver drive a young mother and her disabled child to the hospital where Dr. McFarlane teaches. And he is so sweet and charming to the little girl that she becomes attached to him and his horse right away. And yet, just after he's made one of the most favorable first impressions, you see him look at Dr. McFarlane's housekeeper. And in that look, he completely switches his persona. And you see the danger in him, the devil in him. That the doctor and his household are pretty much under his thrall, because he knows about things that the doctor has done in his past, and if they were to become public, then it would be the doctor's ruin. So there's a push and pull throughout the film between the doctor and the cab driver. And their scenes together are really quite amazing. Just because you've got two actors at the peak of their powers, and Daniel knows he he made a career. He was a character actor, and he made a career out of playing villains. And so, interestingly enough, it's the doctor who actually comes off as less likable. He's not as evil as the cab driver, but he's actually less likable. He's stiff, he's cold, he's humorless, and on the other hand, you have a murderer who laughs, even sings a song at one point, and is generally so charismatic that by the time he's killed toward the end of the film, you're almost sorry to see him go. Because once he's gone, a lot of the energy is gone from the film. Now, this is a movie that a lot of people do not care for, find a little bit slow, and it has been rightfully criticized for having a weak supporting cast. You do have Henry Daniell and Boris Karloff, both excellent, but Bela Lugosi is wasted in a small role, and the rest of the cast are just kind of, well, the equivalent of the supporting cast in some of Price's Poe Corman films that were made in America. Just not they don't have nearly the charisma, the energy, the strength to bring to the table to make them effective presences beside these two juggernauts. Also noteworthy is the fact that this film is set in Edinburgh and only one character, a bit player who appears at the very beginning of the film, has a Scots accent. So people have criticized it for that too. And that is fair. But since Karloff has my heart, and this is just such a tour de force performance from him, I can't help loving it. So it comes in at number 4 on my list of top 50 favorite horror movies of all time. Number 3 is James Whale's The Invisible Man, which also features another of my favorite actors of all time. In Frankenstein, James Whale gave the world Boris Karloff, and in The Invisible Man, Whale introduces Claude Rains to the world. Claude Rains throughout the film is swathed in bandages, except for those few instances when he goes around naked in the winter. It's tough to be an invisible man. But he brings so much manic energy to the role of a man who has turned himself invisible through scientific experiments, and even while he's trying to find a way back to reverse the process, he is starting to lose control mentally, starting to think of the power that he can have, the power to rule. And he is just such a force throughout this film. This is another one where a lot of the supporting cast, now, you do have a lot of great character actors, a lot of great British character actors, I should say, in small roles. You have E. Clive as the inspector, the inspector is another actor altogether. No, the constable, and when the men of the pub where Rains is staying tell him to arrest Claude Rains, he has this deathless line: "How can I handcuff a bloomin' shirt?" If E. Clive did nothing else in all his years as a character actor, he would be worth remembering for saying that line and doing it so beautifully. Una O'Connor is in this film as the landlady of the pub, and she is very much an acquired taste. But if she gets on your nerves, just understand she gets on Claude Rains' nerves just as much. Dudley Diggs is in this film, playing the chief of detectives, who is pretty much the only character in the movie almost as smart as Rains himself. And Henry Travers stars as Rains' scientist boss. Where the movie falls down a little bit is in Gloria Stewart's performance as Rains' love interest. She is just not given enough to do. Her part is underdeveloped, poorly written, and Gloria Stewart is stuck with trying to bring this insipid character to life, and the script just does not do her any favors. But nonetheless, it's a treasure of a film, and Rains is very much a force. It's no surprise that he went on to have a wonderfully long career. And I just love him to bits. He's my favorite character in Casablanca. I love him in Now Voyager. He's wonderfully, sympathetically evil in Hitchcock's Notorious, and just everywhere he goes. I just love him to bits. So that's my number 3 pick. My number 2 pick is The Bride of Frankenstein. And maybe this should have been my number 1 pick just because it is such a classic. It is better than the original because by the time 1935 had rolled around, they had figured out musical scores and the filmmaking techniques had also improved. And this is really the story of Karloff's monster. He's the central character. This is the film in which he meets O.P. Hedges' blind hermit, who teaches him to speak and shows him kindness, the first that the monster has ever known. And of course, this is the movie that introduces us to the iconic figure of Elsa Lanchester, who at the beginning of the movie actually plays Mary Shelley. And then at the end of the film, we see her with her Nefertiti hairdo with lightning strikes in it as the titular bride. And of course, Ernest Thesiger is in this, playing Dr. Pretorius, whom I can't even begin to describe. Colin Clive gives a wonderful performance as Henry Frankenstein. And it just works on all levels. O'Connor is back. Some people might not be thrilled about that, but still a stunning film. And so many memorable scenes, so many memorable bits. And by the end, your heart will break for the monster. So that leaves my number one pick. This one is just frankly dear to me as a fantasy fan and a horror fan and a fan of female protagonists. I refer to Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. It is a coming of age story of a young girl who believes in fairy tales, but not in a naive kind of way. She latches on to fairy tales because that's all she's got, a belief in magic to comfort her, as her mother has made a terrible marriage to a metaphorical monster, one of the most evil characters I've ever seen. A captain in Generalissimo Francisco Franco's army. And in order to save her brother, whom for the first part of the film, the mother is pregnant with him, and then later as a baby, and she learns that to save him and to discover her true identity, she is sent on a quest to gather 3 crucial items. And while she is doing this, she makes mistakes. There is one scene, one horrifying scene, where as a result of a deliberate act of disobedience, she ends up being pursued by a horrific creature with eyes in the palms of his hands. Just absolutely horrific apparition, sure to give you some nightmares. And eventually she has to decide what is more important to her, her own life or her brother's. So this is a test not only of imagination and courage, but of character. And this is the kind of female-centered coming-of-age story that we just don't see often enough in cinema. I almost say in Hollywood, but this was a film made in Mexico, directed by, of course, Guillermo del Toro. And so it's worldwide cinema that I long to see more and better coming-of-age stories centering on girls. And when I think about it, the ones that I like the best of all that I've seen over the past 10 or 20 years or so have been foreign language films, with the exception of Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. So make of that what you will, but that is my choice for my number one pick, because I love it not just as a horror film, but as a fantasy film, and also a film with a heroine that I can click with. The kind of person that 12-year-old me would have latched onto. So there you have it. That is my list of my top 50 favorite horror movies of all time. And thank you for following me on this journey. And happy spooky season. Happy Dia de los Muertos. And I'll see you for the next one.